Turning now to Sudan and the international outrage and pressure to free a pregnant woman who's been sentenced to death just because of her Christian faith. Protesters gathering outside the court where 26-year-old Miriam Ibrahim received her death sentence. She will be hanged for refusing to reject Christianity. Ibrahim's father is a Muslim, but she insists she was raised as a Christian by her mother. In Sudan, as in many Muslim nations, children must follow their father's faith. The judge has ruled that Ibrahim, who was 8 months pregnant, will be hung just as soon as her baby is born. Her cruel sentence is being condemned by human rights groups and our State Department.
Michael, perhaps you can tell our audience who hears a set of facts like that and thinks, that can't be real. That truly can't be real. How real is this? What are the chances this death penalty is going to be carried out?
Well, there's every chance it could get carried out. Not initially, though, Ashley, and that is because this poor woman, Miriam Ibrahim, is actually pregnant. She's 8 months pregnant, as you pointed out. She's in prison, though, while she goes through the pregnancy. The court has said that she can have the baby and then breastfeed for 2 years after that, and then the death penalty would be carried out. Now, you make a couple of points here. She was born to a Muslim father. Now, under interpretation of Sharia law in Sudan, that means she is Muslim. Now, it doesn't apply the other way around, by the way, if it was a male. So she is considered a Muslim by the faith. Now, her dad left when she was 6. She was raised a Christian by her Christian mother. What happened then was she grew up, she married a Christian man who, by the way, is a US citizen, which is an interesting angle to this story. The court then decided, as she's an adult, one of the relatives got involved, reported this. They said, you can't marry a Christian man, therefore the marriage is invalid, it's adulterous. You're getting 100 lashes for that crime. And then when the court said, renounce your Christianity, she said, no, I am a Christian. She said, they said, well, because you abandoned Islam, that's apostasy, and so you are subject to the death penalty. What's crazy about this is she never considered herself a Muslim. She always considered herself a Christian. That's how she grew up. She's refusing to renounce the faith. The court says, well, death penalty for you. What's another interesting fact here, as I said, her husband is a US citizen, says he's been asking for US help and has had none so far. It really is an extraordinary case. As I said, she's in prison with her other child at the moment, who's 20 months old.
Of course.
And she will have that child in jail as well, and not getting any treatment while she's in there, according to her husband.
She's caring for a 20-month-old toddler in prison where, by the way, she's sick and having a bad pregnancy, and they refused to transfer her to a hospital. Her husband was not allowed into the courtroom, barred from the courtroom. He's in a wheelchair and can't live without her, apparently. None of it, all of it, is falling on deaf ears to the Sudanese government. Adute, I know that as a member of Amnesty International, this is what you do. You fight these kinds of cases. You mount your own defense for people who seem defenseless. But how effective can you, or say all of the other embassies that have weighed in the Sudan, saying turn this decision around now? What are the odds?
I think that, as Mr. Holmes said, there's unfortunately a 50-50 chance that the government will go ahead with this. We consider her to be a prisoner of conscience, and this is a violation of Sudan's obligations to the UN standards as well as the African human rights standards. So if we can mobilize enough public pressure, there may be some way to get the Sudanese government to reconsider this case, which is just abhorrent.
Do they
it's
care,
just a tragedy.
Adute? Does the Sudanese government care what happens on CNN? What happens when, the governments of the United States, the UK, Canada, the Netherlands all issue these statements condemning what they're doing and demanding a change? Do they care?
Well, they certainly may not care coming from a CNN or the United States, but if their peers and other governments in Africa actually stand up and say, this is a violation of the African Charter, I think that will carry some weight. And we certainly cannot allow this kind of discrimination, which really applies mostly to women, as Mr. Holmes noted already, to continue, because this is really a restriction on her freedom of association, assembly,
freedom to live,
and even, of course, religion. Yeah.
The war on Christianity is escalating in the Muslim world, and we must keep shining a spotlight on it, because nobody else seems to want to. Sudan has just sentenced a woman to death who is 8 months pregnant. You big, strong boys. 26-year-old Miriam Ibrahim's crime is that she married a Christian and has refused to renounce her Christian faith. She will reportedly be hung sometime after she's given birth. Here's John Bolton's on this despicable intolerance from punks.
It is indicative of this wave of radical Islamism that we're seeing all across North Africa and the Middle East. It's one more indication of what a serious problem it is, and why the United States and others need to take a more comprehensive view. These are not isolated incidents. What happens in Sudan, what happens in Libya, what happens in Nigeria, this is part of a larger pattern, and so far we haven't heard the president speak to it.
You know, these infidels over there who do this, Eric, I'm going to turn it around on you all. You call us infidels. You guys are out of the Stone Age. But if you have Sharia law and you're governed by Sharia law in a country that runs absolutely counter to human rights conventions they've signed, runs against everything we believe in as a country, why don't we just break diplomatic relations with these people?
I think you could. I think it's a good idea. I'm all for that, by the way, as my newfound libertarianism. I think we can break diplomatic ties. For anyone that would think that Sharia law would supersede international laws, especially, but look, this woman was apostasy and adultery, and they're going to give her penalty was death by hanging and 100 lashes. Hopefully the lashes come after the death by hanging. These people are animals, and for anyone to say that Sharia law now should be instituted, like the Sultan of Brunei is trying to put Sharia law into that country, you're right, Bob. Cut off ties with them. I don't know that you can cut off trade with them, because Saudis, there are some that there's a big portion of the Saudi people that would like to see Sharia law, and it'd be tough to cut off, oil trade.
Well, they actually live under Sharia law, the Saudis, and we won't cut off because they're oil, which is another reason I'm for the pipeline, by the way. Cut them off and cut them off completely. Andrea, is this? It seems that in the last couple of weeks, people have finally begun to recognize what is happening there with the 250 or 75 girls who were kidnapped in Nigeria, and now this situation. This has been going on a long time, and nobody's paid any attention to it.
Hundreds and hundreds of years they have been killing not just men, but women, for a lot less than marrying a Christian, too. Remember, she committed the worst crime of all. The Muslim who turns on the Muslim faith. That's far worse than the infidel. But they have killed women and maimed women and beaten women over going out in public without having the accompaniment of a family member. They have killed women for driving in some Muslim countries. You mentioned the Saudis. The Saudis have spent hundreds of millions of dollars funding Wahhabism, which is incredibly anti-West. And yet, even though, Bob, I think when the First Lady holds up the hashtag, she does bring awareness to the issue, but no one explains what it is. No one understands why. They don't get the history of Islam. We don't teach it in the schools. We don't understand that radical Islam has been here for hundreds and hundreds of years. They've been murdering people. This isn't a new thing, and it's not going away anytime soon. So simple signs and hashtags and just bring back our girls isn't enough.
Well, Jedediah, let me just ask Jedediah one question here. This incident, I mean, I would bet you most people did not know that you could be put to death by hanging if you said you were Christian and not Islam. Yeah. You revoked your Islamic faith. Maybe we're learning something from this. I mean, it's a tragic way to learn it, but maybe people realize that we're talking about a bunch of infidel Stone Age people.
I agree with you, though. I think we have to do more than condemn it. I think part of it is educating people and running segments like this and having people at home sit home and watch and understand the severity of what's going on. Look, though, I think ties should be cut. We are a country that stands for freedom. Everything that we stand for stands against this. We stand for freedom of religion. You can marry whoever you want. Individual liberty. That goes in direct contradiction to what's happening here. So I think we have a responsibility to not just say we condemn this, but to put some action behind it. So, yeah, you bet, I would say cut ties.
Let me ask you, Kimberly, they have signed, Sudan has signed conventions, international conventions on human rights, which specifically says that this sort of thing should not happen. Now, it is true in their law, it says that this should happen, but how do you sign an international convention and not be bound to it?
Well, that's the problem. So they're in violation of that, which is why it would be very helpful to bring a lot of attention to this situation. Her husband, to no avail, has begged the State Department, the United States, to get involved, and they have chosen to not do so. What is the message here? I thought they were talking about let's not have a war against women. Well, there is an international war against women to the point where this woman is going to be lashed 100 times and then she's going to be hanged. How is this okay? Why aren't people outraged? And the crimes of which they are accusing her, by the way, does anyone care that she's not guilty of those crimes? This is a legal marriage to a Christian man. She is Christian. They can prove, in fact, that she was never Muslim. It's not like it was a conversion. But they're going to be graceful and wait until her child is 2 years before they execute her.
In fairness to Kerry and the State Department, they have spoken out about this.
Okay, but so
they haven't done anything
would
about
you
it.
suggest cutting off all aid to the Sudan
absolutely,
and other countries?
Absolutely.
All the countries. Because
any
I'm going to remind you
practices
of this when you tell us that we should be continuing aid to certain countries, and I'm just going to remind you, well, if there's Sharia law in that country, you're willing to cut off aid.
Let me make it clear. If there's Sharia law dominates that country's legal system, that it is something that we simply cannot abide and we should not participate in.
No way.
Yes, but our president believes that we have a shared history of tolerance with Islam.
Well, if I'd seen some tolerance out of Islam, I haven't seen it anywhere soon. All right, coming up.